Welcome to session 1, the vital approach explained. In this session, Anna will explain how the vital approach evolved through experience from deep insight into the case-taking process. Using this method leads to more precise prescribing without the pressure of having to take the patient somewhere. Instead, Anna shows how the ultimate target, finding the similimum, can be reached just by being with and following the patient. When we listen carefully, we can detect the vital on all levels. Okay, this is lesson 1 of the series of the advanced course, and it is about levels. So Anna, can you tell me a bit more about your approach towards the levels in homeopathy?
Sure. So my approach is a personal blend, of course, of my 25 years of study and teaching and clinical experience and attending seminars and everything together, my personal development. So that's why I call it my approach. It's a mixture of all these things. I use a diagram with 5 levels, as you can see, and it's to clarify, and for pragmatic reasons, only 5 levels, what I see as a basic theory, let's say, or philosophy in my approach in case taking and also in analyzing a case. I call it the vital approach because in Hahnemann's organon he's talking about a vital disturbance of the dynamism, and to be in accordance with his, let's say, with our basic terminology, that's why I call it vital. So you know, in the organon it is said that disturbance or disease is on this dynamism, and it's expressed on mind and body by signs and symptoms. That's my reading, my very short reading of the spirit of the organon. And my understanding is, if a disturbance is expressed on mind and body, it must be beyond mind and body. So in that case, there must be a level beyond mind and body, and this is reflected in this 5-level diagram. So you can see there are like circles, envelopes, concentric rings, you can say, like a Russian doll. And it's only, of course, it's a representation, it's a scheme, it's not really reality, of 2 levels which are physical and 2 levels which are, let's say, mind, and then you have the vital which is beyond. So that's the basic construct.
Mm-hmm. So how is this different from Sankaran's scheme of his levels?
As you know, yeah, that's a very good question. As you know, I'm very much influenced by Sankaran's teachings, among many others, but he was one of my major masters, and I think his level theory was a huge step forward in the development of homeopathy in the beginning of this millennium, right, beginning of 2000, and he uses 7 levels of experience, whereas my scheme has 5 levels. So there are similarities and there are differences. I'll try to explain shortly what are the main differences. The level 1 in Sankaran's scheme is the level of the name, and his level 2 is level of the facts. He means, or the meaning is, the name of the disease, of course, of the phenomenon. One can say it's not only limited to diseases. For instance, you can say sinusitis. And then his level 2 is the level of the facts, which means I have sinusitis, mostly right-sided. My hours of aggravation are between 4 and 8. It's worse by stooping, you know, what we call modalities. So this is individualized pathology. It's my sinusitis. And Sankaran says, rightly, that mostly allopathic medicines are concerned with level 1, sinusitis. And then you have other healing systems who are more individualized, and they treat your sinusitis, my sinusitis, different sinusitis. So in my scheme, level 1 is actually individualized pathology already. So I don't make the difference, I don't divide it in two levels. According to me, there's only one level. It's individualized pathology because you cannot have anybody else's pathology. You only have your own pathology, right? Whereas my level 2, as far as I can see, is lacking in Sankaran's scheme. Level 2 in this scheme is called the energetic level, and is the energetic aspect of the physical body. So I consider it as a physical thing, but it's invisible. It's a more subtle body, the energy body, than the physical one, who is tangible, measurable, and the energetic or the etheric body, if you want, isn't, or by special instruments. Killian photography can make it visible. So this energy body or the energetic body is the non-tangible aspect of the physical body. I want to stress this because it's not because it's invisible, it's something belonging to the mind. It's responsible, in my understanding, for the vitality of the physical body, the energy distribution, and it's reflected in the systems like the neurological system, immune system, hormonal system, the energy system, overall system. So we can have serious disturbances in the level 2 that are maybe one of the most important causes of chronic diseases. Maybe, it's not sure, but it's very, in my understanding, very well possible that it's the meaning of the Hahnemannian myasens. So the constitutional, physical, mainly physical, inherited weaknesses of the person. So this is my level 2. There's a lot more to tell about this, and we will go into detail when we are discussing, analyzing a case. Level 3, as you see on the scheme, is the emotional level. On Sankaran's scheme, it's the same, it's emotional level. I think that's one of the similarities of the system. His level 4 is delusional level, my level 4 is mental level, and I consider it as a broader level, or a broader understanding of this level, because the mental level is divided in itself in 3 levels. We all know that this is not homeopathy, this is simple psychology. So it's the conscious level, the level of our rational thinking and analyzing and understanding things. Then we have the subconscious level, which contains all the taboos, all the experiences who were forbidden or too painful, mostly in childhood. So they are all swept under the carpet, and they're invisible in our daily life, but they're very active. They are suppressed, they are unconscious, they're not looked at, so they can only express themselves in moments of least control. And this is very important for us to know in case taking. So delusion of the delusion level, of the delusions in the mind, are part of the unconscious. But the mind or the mental level is a broader understanding, a broader concept. And then we have the unconscious mind, and this is the part we have, or this is the part of us that belongs to humanity, to the collective mind, one could say, or the unconscious collective, and it's mostly expressed by symbolic dreams that are a bit difficult to understand or to analyze, and we have to make contact with that level by myths, by allegories, by storytelling, fairy tales, because it's something bigger than our individual life. It's where we have part in the human experience. And then the 5th level, which I call the vital level, in Sankaran's scheme is called the sensation level, and although the name is different, the understanding is more or less the same. It is an experience beyond mind and body, felt in mind and body in the same way. And it is not a product of the mind. It is an experience in mind and body. In Sankaran's scheme, we have level 6. He calls it the energy level or the source level or the level of the substance. And in their understanding, it's where the substance of which the homeopathic remedy is made is almost channeled. It's the language of the substance that the person is channeling. And, or it's the level of, for instance in a child, of pace, of movement, of speed, whatever. And that's why there's an emphasis on the hand gestures in the Sankara understanding. And I agree, there is a 6th level for sure, where the vital sensation, or the sensation of the 5th level, is expressed in every possible way, because there's no way not to express your vital sensation. So you do this by making a signature. If you would make a drawing, if I would ask you to draw something, here is paint and you make a drawing, you would express your vital sensation. If I would ask you to make a dance or a movement, you would express your vital sensation. If I would ask you to make a sound, you would express your vital sensation. But how to prescribe on all these expressions? Since the medium in homeopathy is language, language is, you know, a set of symbols. We have to use our mind to communicate by these symbols. So even when it's there, I think it's very hard to use it or to translate it into a remedy, which is our job, to translate the information we get into a remedy or to match a remedy to the pattern that is revealed before our eyes. So that's why I left the 6th level out. Not because I deny it's there, but because I think it's not very practical. So it's out of pragmatic reasons, and I do use the hand gestures, and I do consider them as important and coming from deeper and more uncontrolled than the words, but they're part of the body language, so I don't make a separate level of it. So that's about similarities and differences.
Yeah. So you call the 5th level the vital level. So, and it is expressed in mind and body. So yes. How do you get there? How is it brought about in the consultation? How do you find it?
Okay, that's a very good question, because you asked me, how do you get there? So my message is, you don't have to get there. You can see the expressions on all levels. But of course it's a technique, and I call it my approach because I want to teach how to discern the information you get, whether it's vital or whether it's just belonging to the level of the person's explanation. Right? I will give you a few examples. So the advantage of my system, if I can call it, the vital approach, is that you don't have to question your patient until you get them on the 5th level. If you can, it's fantastic, then you make a short prescription, but you won't be able in any case. And there are cases you won't be able to navigate, to help your patient to reach this 5th level of experience and tell you exactly the words you need to make a short prescription. And I've seen this many times during my teaching, that then students were disappointed, or they had a feeling of failure, like I didn't make it, and then they feel they have a worthless case because it's either the 5th level or it's nothing. Yeah. And so my approach is to explain, or I hope to demonstrate by live cases, that you can spot these expressions of this vital disturbance on all levels if you know how, and if you know how to differentiate. So this is one of the important advantages. It's practical, it's pragmatic, and it's classic. Even it's classical in my idea. It's a classical approach, and it navigates you through the case. So if you can have a look at the levels again, how can you know on the physical level, for instance, whether you have just a simple physical symptom or it's an expression of the vital? And it's the same question on every level. Yeah. And this is important, right? Because this is crucial. A lot of people aren't able, aren't willing, or aren't even understanding what you're aiming at, and they aren't able to to get to this vital level is very abstract. Nobody ever talks about my vital sensation. You talk about your expressions and disturbances on mental and emotional level and physical level. That's the symptoms, the complaints. You tell your homeopath. You don't tell my vital disturbance is. So the patient doesn't know what are you asking. And you want to go beyond the mind. And then they get a bit puzzled, like, what are you looking for? And it's very important that the homeopath knows exactly what he's looking for. Exactly. And then he knows, from what the patient's telling, he knows how to extract the information that is vital and to differentiate with the non-vital. Okay, so what is this vital disturbance in the first place? It is the way the patient experiences himself and thus the world. He projects his own experience to the world, and it's a limited vision, because in the world there's everything, and in himself or herself there's everything. But he has a fixed pattern, like a matrix, or I have to use images, or it's like a hole you're peeping through, and that's a limited view, a limited experience of all the possibilities. And this limitation, you could say, even Vitulka has already said that, health is freedom, and disease is limitation of freedom. This concept is not new. So this limitation gives is the cause, is the source of all kinds of disturbances, which are, as Hahnemann says, expressions, only expressions of the vital disturbance. So I said, for instance, the physical. A patient tells you about his sinusitis. To use the same example. Of course, we listen to everything the patient has to tell. So he explains all about his sinusitis. If he doesn't know what to tell, then we ask. Okay, I see you suffer from sinusitis, tell me a bit more about it. Very open questions, And then we listen very carefully. Is what the patient telling you belonging to the pathology or not? If it belongs to the pathology, it isn't vital, because then everybody with sinusitis will more or less have the same symptoms. It's common for sinusitis. What is common for sinusitis? You have a blocked nose, you have a pain in your front or in your cheeks, mostly stooping is worse, etc. We know that. We have to study pathology to know what is common in this particular pathology and what is not. And the funny thing is, in homeopathy, we only use what is not. That's what we're doing. So we have to study a lot in order to know what not to use. So we listen to what doesn't belong to the pathology, because that belongs to the patient, and homeopathy prescribes on the patient, not on the pathology. Again, this is very classical knowledge. And also, we ask the patient how the pathology is experienced, and that's a direct level 5 question. And the way the pathology is experienced might give us a clue to the vital experience already. Of course, we're not sure if we only have information on one level. So we go, as the consultation evolves, we go through all levels, and we check all levels. But mostly the patient will, at some point in the analysis, jump from my pathology to me, to my life, my personality, my story. We know that. That's the emotional level. And then again we listen, emotional level. We call it story, but it means every anecdote, that every happening, every occurrence that the patient gives you as an example of how he feels. So we listen to the whole story, and we don't prescribe on the story itself, but again on how the story is experienced. If the patient doesn't give it spontaneously, then we ask him. So you understand now, you have a lot of problems in your job, and you have problems with your colleague, and she feels jealous, and you feel intimidated, etc., etc. How is it for you to be in this situation? And then this is an experience of the story. Now, if this experience happens to point at the same remedy or in the same direction, the same group, then it must be from the vital. The same thing with the delusion. The patient can have more than one delusion. Let's say he has a delusion everybody's watching. So again, we can ask him, how is it for you to have this feeling that everybody is watching? So the questions are always aimed at how is your experience on every particular level. By this, and we say our stepping stones are the symptoms that the patient is giving us. Mostly, not always, but mostly, at the end of the interview, you have a coherent pattern. You have different symptoms, all belonging to one rubric, one remedy or one group of remedies, or you have so much information that you can ask the final question to the 5th level. And how is it for you to have this and this and this problem? And sometimes they can say you literally, almost telling you the remedy.
It doesn't seem easy though.
Well, it isn't.
To make this jump also. To finding the remedy then with a coherent pattern.
It depends a little bit if the remedy is known or not, of course. And you know, we have so many remedies, and how many do we use, and with how many remedies are we familiar? You know, the more remedies you know, the more remedies you will recognize. But the advantage with this system is that you can prescribe remedies that you don't know. So your catalog of remedies is much, much bigger. Even with a very, very good memory, and with, of course, computer software, maybe you can use a few hundred remedies. 300, 400, 500 remedies is a lot. You know, we have thousands of remedies. And with this approach, you can even prescribe a remedy that is not even within these thousands. How? Because you know what you're looking for. So instead of trying to match the patient in a known box of remedies, you try to understand completely at the deepest level, the 5th level, of how it is to be the way the patient is. And then you know what you're looking for. You need a remedy with these qualities. Another advantage of this vital approach is that you can group your remedies, that you can see group symptoms, and you know that, for instance, even if the remedy is unknown, I need a remedy from this particular kingdom or from this particular myosin. So you know what you're looking for. And then your search is more focused.
So the vital sensation, is it the same as the essence of Vitulkas?
Not quite, but the basic idea to prescribe on the essence actually is the same. The difference is in how this word, this essence, this concept is understood. But I think, as far as I can see, that Vitulkas, and not only him, but maybe a whole lot of master homeopaths, try to find the deepest of the person, the essence of the person, because that is written in the organon, that we should prescribe on the most strange and peculiar, the most individual symptoms of the person. And this is interpreted in the course of time in different ways. What is the deepest of the deepest? What is most typical? What is most individual? And so in the evolution, Vitulkas was, as you know, the person who was the reason of a renaissance of homeopathy with his essences. He understood our data, our classical data, in a new way, in a modern way, and he was looking for in this bulk of data, you know, how many symptoms the polychrist have, to the desperation of everybody, of every student. And he tried to find the essence in those remedies, and this was a big jump forward. But the difference is now that the understanding of what is the essence, the core of the person, what is the deepest of the deepest, has changed. So Vitulkas made a combination of emotional symptoms, personality traits, keynotes, physical characteristics, and he interpreted it in one remedy picture. And we know the pictures very well, we all studied them, they were fun to study, but it's like a personality, it's like one possible expression, and this is the disadvantage of the system. So the first idea to grab the essence of a remedy is fine, but then when we limit our understanding to this one expression, and you know the expressions, the workaholic, the VP blonde, the washerwoman, you know, these typical personalities, these almost caricatures of people, limit our view. We won't recognize the same remedy expressed in a different way, and that's a disadvantage. So we would call it, now we would call it level 3. It's mostly personality.
Mm-hmm. So there was a time when we thought that the core delusion was the most essential in what we were looking for.
Yeah, indeed, that was the next step. We were looking for something deeper, beyond the emotions. What is the reason for a person to feel this grief or this anger or this irritation or whatever, or the impatience, or all these personality traits that we see in Vitulka's remedy pictures. And so this was Sankaran's idea, a very, very genial idea, that there is a feeling behind the feeling, and there's an unconscious idea behind these feelings that gives rise to all these feelings. And these are the delusions, and even different delusions are all coming from one basic delusion. And he tried to understand again the essence of the person, but named as a core delusion. So we were looking for the core delusion. Again, the disadvantage of this system is that we disregarded the physical complaints altogether. When a patient came in, what we did was just impatiently listening to his physical complaints, waiting for it to pass, and then start questioning the patient to something more juicy, more useful. And actually we didn't use the physical symptoms, or we hardly used any physical symptoms or any generalities, or all our, you know, basic homeopathic knowledge actually. And we prescribe almost exclusively on the mind, and even only on this particular limited level of the mind, this unconscious part is delusion. So this was maybe a step forward, but again a limitation. And the idea was that this basic delusion produced not only symptoms on the mind, but as well symptoms on the body. And the vital approach doesn't agree with that idea that problems come from the mind. The problems from the mind and the body, the disturbance from the mind and the body, have another source, the same source. They come from the same source, and they are expressed in an encoded way, in a symbolic way, but it's the same thing. And this was unclear with the delusion, with the basic delusion theory.
Mm-hmm. So you think it's a limitation to prescribe either only on the mind or only on the physical?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. So sometimes people will only give physical symptoms, or sometimes you have children where you cannot find a more elaborate story. So how do you treat them? That's
true. So some patients only talk about physical complaints indeed. There are a few reasons for that. Sometimes the patient only has physical complaints. And as far as he knows, on his mental, emotional level, psychological level, he's fine. So he sees a homeopath because he wants to get rid of his physical complaints. And even if you try to push a little bit, he doesn't have to tell you much, or he's unconscious of it, or he doesn't want to tell you. This can be for different reasons. Yeah. It's possible that patient belongs to the Monera kingdom, but I have to tell more about this later. Mm-hmm. A patient needing a remedy from the Monera kingdom tends to experience himself on the vital level as either healthy or unhealthy. Mm-hmm. And he most likely will be unhealthy, otherwise he won't see you. But this is his whole issue in life, and his experiences being normal and healthy, or abnormal, not normal, because unhealthy. So the only thing he has to tell you is all possible details of his disease story, and it will be a long story with all details throughout his life, and it's only, we feel, only physical, but it isn't. It is the expression of the vital on the physical, and the expression in the mind even is healthy or unhealthy, normal or not more normal. And how much you push or you try to push these persons to tell something more interesting or to tell something more deep, they will only give you physical symptoms. But that's a clear hint that you can make a vital prescription of a monarch. So that's one possibility. The other possibility can be that it's a very reserved and very close person that is not very much in contact with his feelings. That's another possibility. What we can do then, because everybody has all levels. It's not because somebody only talks about the physical level that he doesn't have a mind. Everybody has a mind. Not everybody has a disturbed mind, but everybody has an individuality. And this is expressed in the way he is, the way he functions, the way he feels himself. So, and this is his mind, whether he is aware or not aware, whether he's telling you or not telling you. Everybody has a mind. So he will tell you, or he doesn't want to tell you anything more than the physical symptoms. As I told you before, we will listen to, very careful, to what belongs to the pathology, what belongs to the patient. There will be something. If the patient only talks about pathology, this means the consultation is normally 2 hours. In between the lines, most likely, the patient will give you information on how he copes with his disease, because he will tell you what treatments he already went through, what was the effect of the treatment, why he chose this treatment, why not, etc. He will tell you how his history, his disease history evolved. He will tell you about this impact of his disease, and if he doesn't tell you, you can ask, what is the impact of all these problems you're telling me now, your physical problems, and this will give his experience or his delusion, that it's his limitations or his effects. In fact, it's not a problem to prescribe only on the physical level or only on the emotional level. You can prescribe on one level, and this is your door, and you enter this door, and this will lead you to the vital anyway, because every door leads to the vital. The only thing is, if you have confirmation on several levels, you're more sure. We prefer to have confirmation on different levels, but it's very much possible to just open this one door on level 1 or level 2 or level 3, it doesn't make any difference. Go in and question further and further, how, in all details, because in every expression there's the vital. And in children, and especially in children who don't talk, we have another approach. We have to give much more importance to our observation. And again, in my approach, this is a very important part of the case taking. You have the information, this is what the patient is telling you. In the case of a small child, this will be a second-hand information, what the patient, what the parents can tell you about the patient, how he looks, how he acts, what are his habits of the baby, for instance. So this is second-hand, the baby can't tell you himself. And his hours of aggravation and amelioration, his food preferences, all this the patient cannot tell you, but his parents can. So this is information. Second part is observation. This is what you see. And in every case, what you see is important. What you observe. Observe is not only seeing, it's also it's smelling, it's hearing. It's what you, by your senses, can know about the person, can receive. And the majority of all these impulses is implicit. So we absorb them without knowing. They make an impression on us, and mostly we don't even verbalize this, because if we would have rubrics. And we try to train our students from the beginning to make this implicit information from their observation to make it explicit. Explicit is putting words on it. What an impression does this patient make on you? How does he look? How does he behave? How does he move? How does he evolve throughout consultation? What kind of impression does he make on you in his communication, etc., etc. So this is what I call context. It's content is the information, the context is how the information comes to you. The way the language is used, the rhythm of the patient, the intonation, his bodily, his face, how it's changing, his voice, how his voice changing, etc. So in a baby or in a small child, this context is even more important. This how the baby looks, how the baby interacts, how the baby behaves, the impression the baby makes in the interaction with the parents and with you, whether it makes contact or not, will be of even more importance than in an adult case. And we tend to overlook this a little bit, the importance of this. And we have to translate it again into rubrics. And that's how you can prescribe, or can make a vital prescription, even with the baby, on level 5 with the baby. And interestingly, very often, when it's a baby with, let's say, more or less severe pathology early in life, very often, not always, the baby will reflect the physical symptoms, and the mother or the father will reflect the mind symptoms of the same baby. So then you have information from both sides.
Yes, I was just wondering where does the mind information come from?
You don't always have it, but if you have it, it's by understanding. It's understanding what you see, the behavior of the baby, understanding the behavior of the baby, and the information, of course, of the parents. And you can ask the mother, how did you feel throughout the pregnancy? How is your overall feeling? How do you react to the baby, etc.
Yes, I can imagine babies are a bit hard, but I think most difficult ones are the teenagers that don't want to say anything.
Yes, this in-between group, that are dragged to the homeopath by their parents, or who want to come because they want to get rid of their pimples, but they don't want to tell you anything else, right? The acne is disturbing, but they don't want to open up because you're one of the adults. So they don't want to share the secrets. Yeah, we have them, and they're not the easiest group, but again, we let them tell everything they have to tell about their physical complaints, the things they want to tell you about, and everything that they think it's too personal, we don't touch, because I emphasize the importance of spontaneous information, because everything you have to ask for could be a good answer to your question, but not something vital for the patient. If you want to know a little bit more about the pupil, about his feelings or his ideas, then ask about somebody else. So instead of asking how do you feel or how do you think about this, then you can ask, do you have good friends? Yeah, you have friends? Okay, tell me a little bit about your friend. Do you have brothers and sisters? And if they say, oh yeah, my brother, I'm always fighting with my brother, why? Oh, he's so annoying, why is he annoying? So it's always easier to talk about somebody else than to talk about yourself if you don't want to share your innermost feeling. And unknowingly, they will give you an idea of their inner world by telling about somebody else. So this is the information you can use, and the physical complaints will hopefully make a coherent pattern.
So you said something about the 5th level is important to distinguish or to define the kingdoms and miasms. How does that work?
Again, that's a big topic, and we are going to talk about it in several separate lessons, but in general I can give some information. One of the advantages of this approach, another one, is that you can determine the kingdom and the miasm, as I told you, and already have some information of the remedy you're looking for, even if you don't know the remedy. Then you know, I need a remedy belonging to this group or this group. So this group or these categories, this group theory is new, it's very new. We only have the first hints, the first ideas, the first hypothesis of these groups no longer than 20 years ago. And you know, when we studied, Roger Morrison was one of the first, I think, who grouped remedies, mainly the compound groups or the compound remedies, you know, and he determined characteristics in these compounds from the part of it. So you have the K-like characteristics, and you have the arsenic characteristics, and the sulfur characteristics, and the natriums and the magnesiums. This made our life just a little bit easier because we have so many K-lights and we have a lot of magnesiums and a lot of natriums, etc. But this was only compound remedies and only the elements. But still, the idea was there that part of the remedy, the characteristic, is made of the group it belongs to, like the carbons, etc. So then I think the next one, or maybe simultaneously, doesn't matter, is Sankar and Schouten, who did more research and work on the periodic table, and who figured out that remedies, well-known remedies, classical homeopathic remedies with good provings and a lot of symptoms, who are in the same vicinity, that they have common characteristics like palladium and platina and argentum and aurum. So these precious metals, they seem to have similar characteristics. And then the other metals, they compared and there were similar characteristics, etc. So this was an evolution in the understanding of, or in the hypothesis, like if there are remedies outside the homeopathy that belong to the same group, can we, within homeopathy, classify them or see group characteristics? And the answer was yes. We know that now, but it's new information. This kingdom theory is a work in progress. It's not finished yet, and we have to fine-tune a lot and add a lot of information, and a lot of, for instance, plant kingdoms are not even studied, or in the animal kingdom, you know, so vast, we have to study a lot of remedies. But still, we can already work with it, and we have the general features of the kingdom in itself and the sub-kingdoms, which is so useful in consultation. So this, I said in my scheme, in my vital approach level scheme, that it's only on level 5 one can determine kingdom and miasma. Why? Because kingdom again is an experience, or an experience of the patient leads to kingdom information. I try to clarify it shortly, briefly, because we're going to detail talk about it in the next sessions. But if you ask a patient, for instance, he tells you an anecdote, story, level 3, and of difficulties, of disturbances. For instance, he said he can tell you he feels insecure. I have a lack of self-confidence, I don't dare to talk in public. Okay, so you ask him to tell more and explain in all detail, and then you ask your 5-level question. How is this for you to be always so embarrassed and to be timid and lacking self-confidence? And the patient will probably give you a few more or less general answers, like, oh, it's annoying and it's limiting and it keeps me from doing things and I wished I didn't have it, etc. So little by little we ask more, and how is it for you to have it? And the patient then, if you help him a little bit, because he doesn't know what you're asking, probably give you first a few delusions. Well, I think everybody can see that I'm a failure, or everybody can see my insecurity, etc. And then, you know, everybody's watching me, for instance, in the example, and then you can still ask further, for you to have this idea that everybody's watching you, and it's limiting you in your performance. How is it for you? And then the patient can say, well, you know, it's, and whatever he will say then, most likely will lead to the kingdom. Then he can say, well, you have nothing to hold on. You stand all alone and the ground is falling away under your feet. Then, you know, his base is not very firm, and by the least stress is falling away. So this is an experience, or you can say it's an illusion, from the mineral kingdom. Like he has nothing to stand on, nothing to hold on to, nothing firm to base his existence on. Whereas a plant could feel, oh, this is very painful, because you're standing there and everybody can see your sensitivity, and you have no defense, and you know you're so vulnerable, and then, you know, blood is a plant sensation. It's a feeling of a conifer. That you're breakable, that you're fragile, that you're vulnerable, and this could be a plant, or leading to a plant prescription of the conifer family. And an animal remedy, or a remedy belonging to the animal kingdom, could say, I'm like a fool, like I'm stupid, like I'm completely ridiculous, you know. Other people, they in this situation, they act normal, but me, you know, it's like I'm completely inferior. And then, you know, it's a matter of being superior, inferior, who is the best, who is better than the other one, and then, you know, we're in the competition of the animal kingdom. So this information already limits our search to a particular group. And imagine what a relief if you have a patient in front of you and you only have to look in the periodic table for a solution instead of in this vast ocean of possible remedies. So this is very, very useful information. And the myasins, or the myasins theory, is based on Sangren's interpretation of the myasins. We go into that in our session about the myasins. But again, it comes down to a coping up mechanism of this particular problem that the patient perceives to have, and this is also a group. This limits our possible remedies for this patient to a particular group, namely the group that copes up in this particular way. So again, it is a limitation. So for instance, in my example of the conifers, if we have this particular family and we have this particular myasin, there are only a few possible remedies left. And then we can even prescribe a remedy that is unknown to us, but happens to belong to this particular characteristics, this myasins crossed with this plant family. With the same result as if you would prescribe a very well-known and well-proven remedy with the same profound or vital reaction.
So this concept of the vital sensation seems very interesting to me, but still it's not completely clear to me. Can you just tell me again what you mean with this vital?
It is a little bit of a vague concept, I agree. Because I said it's beyond mind and body, but what is beyond mind and body? And I said it's the most individual of the person, but it is not the individuality of the person, it's part of his individuality. And it is an experience, but how do you define an experience? It's a bodily experience, it's a mind experience, and mostly it's implicit. As I told you, the patient doesn't know what you're asking for, because you're not aware of your vital sensation since it is the way you are, and you never question this, and you never ask yourself if somebody else has the same vital sensation or another one. So it's so natural to be like that you never ask yourself, is there another way of being? You have to be a homeopath to think about these things and to ask for these things. That's why a lot of people have a hard time to verbalize it. But as I told you, it is important that at least the homeopath knows what he's looking for. So, in my point of view, the vital sensation is the way you experience yourself. And if it's not disturbed, you're not aware of it. So it's as if it's not there. You only feel your vital sensation when disturbed. In the same way that, for instance, let's say your stomach, when your stomach is disturbed, you have gastritis, then you will feel physical discomfort, and you will feel an influence on your energy level because you can't eat well, you can't digest, you feel bloated, you have pain, you feel drained of energy, and you feel listless, you don't want to do things, you don't want to go anywhere, you don't want to socialize, and then you are irritated because every noise or whatever aggravates your situation, aggravates your pain, your pathology, and you start to worry because you have to take medication, and medication is bad for you, and maybe you have an ulcer, or maybe you have something worse and it's not recognized, and you have a serious disease and you'll never get rid of it, etc. So on every level you are disturbed with this gastritis. Now let's say you go to a homeopath, you go to a healer, and your gastritis is cured. So you don't feel anything anymore on the physical level. You have your energy back. You don't have emotional complaints of irritation, and you don't have worries, but you still have a stomach. Your stomach is still there, but you're not aware of it. And in a healthy situation, you don't have to be aware of your stomach. It does its work in silence, in the dark, and without asking for attention. And it's the same with the vital sensation. When it's there and when it's not disturbed, you are not disturbed by it on any level. So it doesn't produce symptoms. So it doesn't produce unwanted thoughts, or it doesn't produce disturbing emotions, or it doesn't take your energy away, or it doesn't produce physical symptoms. But it's still there. It's your vital sensation, the way you feel yourself, you experience yourself. And when it's disturbed, then it's the vital disturbance. And that is what we try to heal, to harmonize with our similar remedy. The remedy has a resonance with this vital disturbance. So it is, as I told you, not a product of your mind, and that's the main difference. It's not something you think, but your thoughts are influenced by the vital. The vital is first, and you're born with it, because the question is it a result, or a question that is often, comes up often, is if your vital disturbance is the result of some trauma in your life or something that happened. And as far as I can see, you're born with it. You're born with it because it is so much intertwined with the way you are. And that's why you're not aware of it. And it's so personal as your own face, as your own facial features, and it will never change. So you're born with it. Of course, you will evolve, but evolve is natural. That's not a disease or a disturbance, but it belongs to you, the way you are, in the same way as you are born at this particular place and time, and this will never change. Of course, you will evolve, but you will always have this date of birth, this place of birth. So that's, of course, your astrological quality of time that you appear here. And you have this particular set of parents, and this will never change. Whether they're dead or alive, you will always be the child of these two persons. And so you will inherit at least their physical characteristics. So that is, you could say, your bias and your physical mind, your constitution, your inherited constitution. And according to circumstances, this can give complaints or not. If the circumstances are very positive, then maybe it's only latent and not manifest, but your tendencies are there. That's what I'm trying to say. So if you have brothers and sisters, let's say you are the third child in a family of 4, the rest of your life you will be the third child in a family of 4, whether you are with your brothers and sisters or not, whether you see them, whether they're there for your life. You have your place in the family, so you're part of this family constellation. And these things will never change. And as far as I can see, your vital sensation will never change. You're born with it, it's before your experiences, and it's determining how you will experience what is happening in your life later. So you will make interpretations in accordance to your vital sensation and not the other way around.
I see, thank you. I noticed also on your schedule there is a mention of anamnesis. Will you talk about that a bit?
More than a bit, but we'll do that in a separate lesson, because anamnesis, of course, you know, is very important. I think every author of a homeopathic book starts with the words, a good anamnesis is half of the work, or even more than half of the work. And what is a good anamnesis? We have recommendations in the organon, which are very good, I use them. And the recommendations I give are, again, a combination of classical aphorisms and let's say the blended with 25 years of clinical experience. And so I try to make it in a little scheme that you have as a help throughout consultation. There are like steps, different steps, separate steps in a consultation, and it is a particular structure. It's not always like that, it's not inflexible. Of course we follow the patient, you know that we have to be flexible, but in general there's a structure throughout anamnesis, and it helps you to know where you are and where you're heading. So this step 1, this step 2 and this step 3 that you can see on the screen, and I will go into it very shortly, is just a little help that I'm trying to explain to the students and homeopaths by your questioning. What are you actually doing? It's as if you're the person who's questioning, and at the same time there's somebody else watching you, or watching the anamnesis, the interaction between you and the progress of the consultation. So the first step is what I call defining the territory. What are we going to talk about? And this is exclusively determined by the patient. That's where we follow the patient. Then the second step is what I call more of the same. We question the patient about all the topics that he spontaneously came up with in the first part. And then the third step is of the consultation is mostly confirmative, and if we don't have enough information, we ask more direct questions to level 4 and level 5. And level 4 questions are fears and dreams, and mostly they give direct hints to level 5. So there is a structure, and I will explain this in all detail.
Now that we have gained insight in the system of the vital approach, we hope that you are eager to practice what you've heard in this session. If you want to explore more, you can read Anna Varga's book, consult the schemes and manual, or rather opus, or attend one of her seminars. You can find the schedule of her classes on her website. In the next sessions, we will see how the developments in homeopathy have helped recently even more with prescribing the simillimum. We'll start with the classification in kingdoms and miasms. We will start with the classification of remedies in kingdoms and miasms in session 2, and hope you will be there.